Hello and welcome to this special edition of Access Asia. 10 years on from the Fukushima disaster, though the effects will continue to be felt for decades. From human loss to public accountability, from nuclear energy to the problematic cleanup. Today, we try to answer where the road to recovery will lead. On March 11, 2011, a nightmare scenario of unthinkable bad luck and poor planning bore down on Japan. First, one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded struck the northeastern coast. Just 1 hour later, a tsunami slammed into the shore. The waves hit the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, an inadequately prepared facility, triggering the world's worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl. Olivia Salazar-Winspear reports.
A mammoth earthquake, then a devastating tsunami. Catalysts for the largest nuclear disaster of the 21st century. On March 11, 2011, in response to the tremors, reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant shut down, which cut the electricity supply. That caused the cooling systems to fail, prompting nuclear meltdown and explosions. In the days that followed, radioactive waste spread, thousands were evacuated from their homes, and the surrounding area was declared a no-go zone.
私は今回の地震、そして津波、そして原発の今の状況など、戦後65年間経過した中で、ある意味でこの間で最も厳しい危機だと考えております。
Efforts to decontaminate the area started immediately. It soon became clear that storing the toxic seawater used to cool the reactor blocks was to be a major challenge.
この事故の処理、汚染水の処理についてはしっかりと国が前面に出て、私が責任者としてですね、対応していきたいとこのように考えております。
Yet today those tanks are almost full, and fears for public health have not been eliminated, especially since authorities plan to release more than 1 million litres of radioactive water into the sea in the near future.
この方々が心配されることは、多分海にもし流すんだったら魚介類で、その魚介類を食べた時の影響がどうかということになると思います。
A High Court judge eventually found the Tokyo Electric Power Company, who operated the plant, responsible for the disaster, saying they could have foreseen the causes of the accident, something TEPCO itself admitted. It will still take decades to fully decommission this site, but the government's determined to pursue nuclear power in the coming years, despite opposition from a large part of Japanese society. 10 years ago, 30% of Japan's electricity was provided by 54 nuclear reactors. Stricter safety standards implemented by a newly created regulator in 2012 mean that today only 9 of them meet requirements. They're currently operating at 5 different sites, a situation that's pushed nuclear energy provision down to around 2%. So what now for Fukushima? Japanese authorities have been keen to reassure people that levels of radiation in the area are no cause for concern, and have even scheduled Olympic events there. Plans that were thrown into question when another powerful earthquake hit the region last month, causing cooling water levels to fall in the dormant reactors. There are now fears these additional leaks could further complicate security at the plant. It's a timely reminder that the gravity of events at Fukushima mean it will take more than 1 decade to recover from a disaster that many believe has left an indelible mark on the environment.
Well, for more, you can speak to Dr. Tatsu Suzuki, a professor at Nagasaki University. Dr. Suzuki, thank you for speaking to France 24. I want to begin by asking you, first of all, not as a scientist, but just as a person, what do you remember from March 11th, 2011?
Yeah, I was at the public symposium, and I remember that the chandelier of the floor was shaking so heavily, and it is a long, long earthquake. I never felt that scale earthquake before. And we evacuated from the building, but it was okay for a while. And then second earthquake again came, and that was horrifying also. But after that, I returned to my office to check whether the nuclear power plant was safe.
You're a former nuclear engineer. Did this disaster change how you view nuclear energy?
Yes, I was an engineer. When we talk about the risk of nuclear power plants, we calculate basically by numbers, probability versus times consequences. That is the risk assessment. But this particular accident made me think that the risk cannot be measured only by the engineering risk. We have to consider other social, environmental, and ethical aspects of nuclear energy. I met several people from Fukushima district, and I realized that the accident changed their lives so completely. And so I was shocked to hear all these comments, even though they were safe in terms of lives, but their life have been completely changed.
It seems like a common sentiment. Now, after the disaster, Japan actually switched off all of its nuclear power plants for a few years, but they've been gradually switched back on. Why is that, and what have the consequences been?
Well, it was the utility companies who shut down the reactor due to a regular shutdown schedule. The problem was that in order to meet the new regulatory standards, they have to reapply for the new standard, and it took some time. That's why it was shut down for 2 years or so. And then utilities need probably power, and also for their own economic reasons, they are coming back online one by one. And so this is primarily because of the energy need, and also for the economic reason for the utilities.
Doctor, do you fear that Japan, maybe the world, has not learned the lessons from this disaster even 10 years on?
Well, my short answer is no. Unfortunately, one of the biggest lessons learned from the Fukushima accident is the trust is very important. Public trust is very important. Unfortunately, utilities cannot keep up to restoring the public trust, because they don't have enough transparency, and information disclosure is not enough, and not also quick enough to inform the public about what happened. For example, just recently, last February, it was revealed that at the nuclear power plant in Niigata, another power plant of TEPCO's power plant, an employee was allowed to go into the control room. Those employees are not supposed to be allowed to be into the control room, which is a significant security breach. Those things make the public trust much worse. And that's what I meant, that they have not learned a lesson. So I argue that the utilities and nuclear industry, or even the government, should learn the lesson very hard. Thank you very much.
Doctor, thank you very much for your time. Professor Tatsu Suzuki from Nagasaki University. Well, in the end, the three-pronged disaster, an earthquake, tsunami, and a nuclear meltdown, killed almost 20,000 people and forced nearly 500,000 to evacuate. To this day, scars remain. Among the survivors, there's resilience, but also regret and doubt. This report comes from our team on the ground.
Atsushi Fujita lost almost everything 10 years ago. The tsunami swept his fishing boat 3 kilometers inland. He survived, but his brother and colleagues were killed.
There were dead bodies in the water. I even remember seeing the floating body of a man wearing a kitchen apron.
The town of Rikuzen Takata was among the places hit hardest by the tsunami. 10% of the population died, and 90% of its fishing fleet was destroyed. Today, local fishermen are protected by an 8-meter-high seawall.
At first, the wall felt oppressive. I was stressed out all the time. It was like being in a kind of prison, day in, day out. But now I don't think it's possible to destroy the wall. It's better to learn to live with it.
Fujita has reason to feel optimistic. His oyster cultivation business is booming. a sign that the ocean can give as well as take away.
The tsunami cleaned the soil on the seabed, so now it only takes 2 years for oysters to reach their best. Before the disaster, it took 3 years. They grow really quickly. It's said that the tsunami was a once-in-a-1,000-year event, but it feels like the sea has become 1,000 years younger. The sea can be generous.
Fujita is living proof of the resilience of the people of Tohoku.
It makes me feel hungry. They're bigger than my tummy.
In Fukushima, people who had to flee their homes after the nuclear disaster have returned to open a traditional restaurant. 10 years on, it's a symbol of recovery, attracting diners of all ages.
People in other countries don't really understand what's happening in Fukushima. I spent some time living abroad, and people would ask me if anyone was living here. I want to tell people that life here isn't what they think. Look around. We're alive and happy. This is what Fukushima is like today.
It's unlikely that life in Fukushima will ever return to normal. But a decade on, people here are slowly rebuilding, helped by an unshakable community spirit.
Well, that's it for this edition. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned to France 24.